Hello and welcome to the 12th and final session in our programme, Novel Writing, pages 1 to 384. My name is Sarah Hull and I'm the Creative Director for Writers Essentials. In this session, I'll be going through the process of submitting your novel to an agent or publisher, in terms of who, what, when, where and how, what to expect and what comes next. Firstly, who you're submitting to. To get your novel published, you have three options. Get an agent who will pass it on to a publisher, send it directly to a publisher, or self-publish. A traditional or commercial publisher will buy the rights to a book from the author and will pay to have the book edited, typeset, designed, printed, marketed and distributed. They will then retain the majority of the profits from the sales of the book and pay the author a percentage, their royalties, because they take the financial risk in producing the book. A publisher will also work to publicise a book and to sell the foreign rights so that it can be translated and sold abroad. A literary agent will take an author on, submit their manuscript to a publisher, and then negotiate a contract on the author's behalf. They will then take a percentage of the royalties made by the author. Although this means the author has to share their royalties, having an agent can be advantageous because they will work to secure more favourable terms for their client from the publisher. And some publishers won't even consider unsolicited manuscripts, ones sent directly by an author, and will only look at a book that's been recommended by an agent. Finally, there is the option of self-publishing your book, either as an ebook or in print form or both. Self-publishing means the author pays for the book to be produced and keeps the rights and all the money from the sales of the book. The book will still need to be edited, designed, printed and shipped. Skipping things like the editing process can be detrimental to a book because it means that the quality suffers. The main disadvantages to self-publishing are the upfront cost and the difficulty of breaking into the market and getting your book into the hands of your readers. I recommend thoroughly researching this option if you're considering it. Secondly, when to submit. Basically, this should be when the book is ready and when you're ready. You should by this point know what kind of book you're writing, who it's aimed at and what it promises, and have done multiple edits in order to make sure the book delivers on that promise. But before you send your novel off, do at least one final polish to look for common mistakes in the writing. In other words, things that will make your editor go, "Ah!" And these are adverbs. Using a strong verb that gets the point across rather than a weak verb supported by an adverb will have more impact. E.g., instead of walking quickly and purposefully, try striding. Qualifiers. Words like quite and very can lessen the impact of the adjective they're put in front of, so you're better off finding a stronger adjective. For example, delighted instead of very happy, or irritated instead of quite annoyed. Repetition. Avoid repeating a word or phrase, especially in the same sentence, paragraph and page, but also when referring to a different event or character. Check you're not repeating a point unnecessarily, or find a different word or phrase to use. Explanation. Don't explain things to your reader. Look out for parts of your writing that could be precipitated by the question, why? And let the details and well-chosen words imply and reveal more than is directly told to the reader. Clichés. To be avoided, like the plague. Try and find a new way of saying it, and make your words specific to your novel, based on the setting, characters, plot and narrative voice. Changes in tense. Keep your tense consistent, and make sure if you change tense, it's on purpose and it's correct. Technical errors. Check your work for spelling and grammar mistakes, but don't worry too much about this, as it's incredibly difficult to copy edit your own work, because your brain will begin to see what should be there rather than what's actually there. Doing a final edit or two will tighten up and improve your writing and help make it really shiny. But bear in mind that 1, a copy edit will be applied later in the process, and each publisher will have their own editors and house style. And 2, an agent or publisher may ask for more edits or even rewrites to be done. As and when these things occur, I recommend not telling them it's fine, it's been professionally edited, or even I've edited it, it doesn't need to be altered, because it won't change their opinion. You will also need to make sure that you're ready to submit your manuscript. As you're probably tired of hearing, being published and even getting an agent is really difficult. So you will need to be aware of and able to cope with the potential rejection and/or negative feedback, and you may not hear anything back at all of which can be really disheartening. But when the manuscript is ready and when you're ready, send it off and see what happens. Thirdly, where to submit. The more you know about the publishing world, the better. So you need to research the industry and specifically which agents and publishers are looking for books like yours. You can find the names of publishers by looking at books similar to yours, either on the back cover or on the copyright page at the front, or just by searching online. The Writers and Artists Yearbook also provides lists of agents and publishers, and their website has masses of information and advice. And by the way, I recommend making friends with this resource as soon as possible if you haven't already. You can then put together a list of agents and publishers who are looking for the kind of book you're submitting, and you will then need to check the submission guidelines on each one's website. These are generally located under the Submission or About Us sections. If it's a publisher, check that they accept unsolicited manuscripts, and whether it's a publisher or agent, check if they are currently accepting new submissions and exactly what they're looking for. Fourthly, what and how to submit. To give your novel the best chance of being published, you need to carefully choose which agents and publishers to send it to, read their submission guidelines, and then follow them. These will include things like what documents they want, whether they prefer the submission by post or email, and details like the size of the font and the type of files they can accept. Basically, submit what they ask for, how they ask for it, and no more. Generally, agents and publishers will ask for a cover letter, a synopsis, and part or all of the manuscript. The cover letter should be a brief summary, generally no more than one side of A4, about you and your writing and why you think your novel is exactly what the agent or publisher is looking for. And for this, here are 4 key things to think about. 1. Published works. It's worth mentioning if you have any commercially published books or articles, poems or short stories featured in magazines or on well-regarded websites. Self-published works are generally less relevant unless they've sold unusually well or received a distinctly high number of good reviews. Again, I'd recommend researching self-published books and seeing how yours compares and whether or not it stands out as being particularly successful. 2. A marketing angle. If you've identified a viable marketing angle for the book, this can be very useful. This would be things like the significant anniversary of an event which is likely to be featured in the media and which forms a key part of your novel. For example, a war or a scientific discovery or the birth or death of a historical figure. Although bear in mind, you need to allow roughly 6 months to a year for a book to go through the publishing process. So an anniversary won't be of use to you if it's likely to no longer be in the news by the time your book hits the shops. Or if you have a platform from which to market the book, perhaps success in another area like music or academia, or if you have an online presence via a social media website or a blog and a significant number of followers. Number 3, the details. These are the specific things about your book which means it would be suitable for a particular agent or publisher. So based on their submission guidelines and the kinds of other books they take on, why do you think your novel would appeal to them? For example, if it's a crime story and they're specifically looking for crime fiction, or if it's like 1 or 2 other books featured on their website. Again, this is where researching is essential because it shows you've familiarised yourself with each company and you're not just picking places at random. And number 4, the elevator pitch. Many of you will have heard of the elevator pitch. This is how you would describe your novel in about 30 seconds or so if you found yourself trapped in a lift with the head of fiction of your ideal publishing company. This isn't what the book is about, but why it's worth publishing, buying and reading. And something along these lines should be included in your cover letter. A sentence or 2 which summarises what your novel promises and why lots of people will want to buy it. The classic story recommendation is, you'll laugh, you'll cry, it'll change your life. But your description needs to be more specific and a bit more detailed than that. So think in terms of the genre and good adjectives that accurately describe your novel. For example, funny, exciting, captivating, gritty, romantic, imaginative, thoughtful. And then mention very briefly details about the story which indicate how the book will fulfil this description. So for example, It's a gritty political thriller following the twisted lives of 4 people in inner city London in the darkest days of the Cold War. Or it's a heartwarming adventure story about 2 children who find an abandoned boat and a treasure map while on holiday in the Lake District. This is the hook for the novel, and it will be used to market it to the reader, the consumer. This then sets up an exchange between the reader and the writer and publisher and bookseller. The book, using its cover, typeface, title and blurb, promises something to the reader. The reader then buys it and reads it, expecting that promise to be fulfilled. If the book delivers, it's a good book. If it doesn't, it isn't. And that is what the agent or publisher will be looking for on behalf of the reader. What kind of book are they being offered by the writer? What does it promise? And does it live up to that promise? The synopsis should be an overview of the story, about 1 to 2 pages long, but check if the submission guidelines specify a length. And it should include the beginning, middle and end, so that the recipient can see the whole structure of the book. It should not be a blurb, which only sets up the story, and nor should it be an extract from the novel. To keep it brief, I recommend focusing on the central storyline, the journey of the protagonist through the novel, from the establishing of their objective to the climax when we find out whether or not that objective is achieved. Bring in subplots, internal developments and backstory when they're relevant to the progression of the main story. You can find examples of how to write a good synopsis online, and again, check out writing and publishing websites for information and advice. Finally, the manuscript is the unpublished novel and nothing else, so you will need to make sure it doesn't have any notes or comments or half-finished sentences, and you will need to send as much of it as the submission guidelines say to. And most importantly, make sure your manuscript is good. Agents and publishers reject most of the submissions they receive, and if a book hasn't been well written, they will pick up on its weaknesses pretty much immediately, and may not get past the first chapter or even the first 5 pages. But they are looking for things to publish. They want to find something that excites them, that they believe in, and that they think other people will enjoy reading too. And that could be your novel. Then, what to expect? Having done all the work and sent your manuscript off to the right place in the right way, you will then have to wait. Agents and publishers are really busy, and they will have a pile of submissions to get through. This process can take weeks or even months, so you will need to be patient. When reading the submission guidelines for each agent or publisher, check if they mention sending a receipt of your work, or if they ask for a stamped addressed envelope to return a printed version, but only send this if they specifically ask for it. Also note whether they have a policy of replying to all submissions and within a particular time frame, although many of them don't promise this, or if they state that if an author hasn't heard back by a given time, that author can assume that their submission has been unsuccessful. Different agents and publishers will have different responses to the question, should I get in contact if I haven't heard anything back for a while? The general rule is don't pester them. If you do decide to chase up a submission, you need to do so nicely, and I recommend waiting 2 to 3 months or a little longer than the time given in the submission guidelines if specified, and then sending a polite email and waiting again. If you still don't hear back, you can probably assume that your submission has been unsuccessful. Repeatedly getting in contact is likely to annoy an agent or publisher, and is unlikely to persuade them to take on your novel. And finally, what comes next? If an agent or publisher is interested in your novel, they will of course get in contact and tell you so. But this is only the next step and is not a guarantee of publication. An agent will still have the job of sending your manuscript to a publisher and securing a publishing deal. And sometimes an agent will offer a client a contract, but also require more work to be done on the manuscript before offering it to a publisher. When a publisher shows interest, a contract may not be immediately forthcoming, because the book still needs to be agreed by a team of people, including editors, sales representatives, marketers and designers. But this does at least mean that you've established a relationship. Again, be patient and don't pester them, but if you do know that your manuscript is being sent by an agent to a publisher, or is already being considered by a publisher, you're in a much stronger position to chase it up with a gentle prompt via email, if you haven't heard anything for a while. If a publisher does offer you a contract, that should mean that the book will be published, but they may require some more rewrites to be done before the book is handed on to the professional editors. For more information about the publishing process and how it works, take a look at video number 7 in this series, or again, check out publishers' websites and other useful resources like Writers and Artists Yearbook and website. If your submission is unsuccessful, but they take the time to send you a personal response, treasure it. That generally means the agent or editor liked your work enough to send you an individual response, even if they decided not to take the book on. I'm afraid most agents and publishers don't have time to offer feedback on unsuccessful manuscripts, so most authors don't know why their book was rejected, but it will probably be for one of the following reasons. 1. It's the wrong place. It may be that, despite doing your research, the book isn't suitable for the agent or publisher you've sent it to, in which case you're best off submitting it to someone else and possibly doing some more research to make sure the submission fits the company you're sending it to. 2. It doesn't deliver what it promises. A common reason for rejection is that a manuscript is confused in what it's trying to offer and/or doesn't deliver what it promises, which makes it difficult to market and less appealing to the potential reader. This indicates it needs a rethink and possibly an edit or even a complete rewrite. 3. It's too niche. Some books are well written, but only appeal to a limited number of readers and so are too niche, which would mean the publisher is likely to make a loss on them because they won't sell enough copies to cover the cost of publication and make a profit. You might be able to find a publisher who caters for this market, or you could consider self-publishing and targeting that niche market. 4. It isn't good enough. Or it might simply be that the book isn't well written enough. This would mean that the agent won't think a publisher will want to take it on, and that a publisher won't think a reader will want to read it. Again, this might mean a total rewrite is required, or that the key aspects such as setting, plot, character and writing style need work, or that it's back to the drawing board with a totally new idea. So what do you do if your submission is unsuccessful? As I mentioned earlier, if you get any advice from a publisher or agent which might identify one of the problems I've just listed, take it on board and see if the problem can be solved by sending the manuscript somewhere else or by editing it. If, however, all your submissions are unsuccessful and you don't know why, I then recommend sending your manuscript to an editorial service for an assessment. These generally aren't free, but they offer the vital feedback that publishers and agents don't have time to provide, and they can be a real lifeline to a manuscript. Again, you will need to research feedback services and the different packages available. To find out about the one-on-one feedback service offered by Writers Essentials, check out our website. Finally, there's always the question, should I give up or crack on? Rejection, especially if you don't hear back, can be really demoralising, and after several unsuccessful submissions, a lot of writers simply give up. And quite frankly, fair enough. But if you feel compelled to write, then keep writing. Find out more about writing, keep working on it and keep going. Learning to write well is like learning to play an instrument or cook or draw. It takes time and practice. And you might only ever write for your friends and family, or you might get your book published. But if you care about it and you want other people to enjoy reading it, you might as well make your writing as good as it can be. And whatever happens after you submitted your novel, at least you've blooming well started. You've taken that step and sent your work out into the wider world. And you never know where that journey could take you. To keep up to date with our online resources, feedback services, classes and courses, visit our website www.writersessentials.com. Thanks for watching and happy writing.